They enter your home when something breaks. You let them into your most private spaces, your bathrooms, your basements, the hidden infrastructure that keeps your life running. Number 1. Mohammad A.H. Mohammad, the Alabama plumber who ordered hits on 7. Mohammad A.H. Mohammad was 63 years old when federal agents arrested him in September 2024. By then, he'd been running American Plumbing Service LLC in Homewood, Alabama for years. To customers, he was just another tradesman, but to his own family, he had become something far more dangerous. A man obsessed with control, consumed by rage, and willing to pay for murder. The story begins in November 2021. Mohammad had been married since March of that year, but inside the home, cracks were already showing. His wife would later describe escalating violence that sent shivers through the courtroom. She wrote, "He has hurt me and my kids. He has used weapons against us." According to court documents, Mohammad had threatened to lock his family in the basement and kill them. He'd put a gun and knife against his children's heads. He'd fired guns at them during arguments. In one chilling statement, his wife recalled him saying, "He wanted to shoot my daughter between the eyes." By November 2021, just 8 months into the marriage, 3 protection from abuse orders had been issued. In April 2022, Hoover police arrested him on felony stalking charges. Investigators discovered he'd attached GPS tracking devices to multiple family vehicles. Then, the fire started. In January 2023, a vehicle belonging to a close friend of Mohammad's wife was found burned. 9 months later, a son's SUV was destroyed by fire. Then 3 more vehicles. Each blaze was ruled suspicious. Each pointed back to the same man. At one bond revocation hearing, prosecutors played an audio recording. A witness had confronted Mohammad, warning, "If you hurt them, you'll go to hell forever." Mohammad's response was immediate, cold, certain. "No, God will reward me." He was released on bond in February 2024, fitted with an ankle monitor, but surveillance didn't stop his planning. By August, Mohammad had reached out to an acquaintance, someone he trusted. He made repeated requests, according to FBI documents, for this person to find someone who could take care of his family members. He showed photographs of burned cars. He explained how his family had turned against him. The cooperating witness contacted the FBI. On August 28, 2024, Mohammad met with a man he believed was a professional hitman. In reality, he was an undercover federal agent. Mohammad showed the agent photos of his family on his phone, his wife, his 6 adult children, ages 21 to 34. He drove the agent past 2 homes where his targets lived. Then he laid out the deal. 6 kids and the mom, Mohammad said. "You pick and choose who you're gonna take out and get paid." The agent asked how many people needed to die. 6 kids and the mom. He wasn't asking for a quick massacre. He wanted them picked off one by one. He wanted them to suffer, to live in fear, not knowing who would be next. He was willing to pay $20,000 for his wife's death, $5,000 each for his 6 children, a total of $50,000. He handed over $550 as a down payment. Cash. Right there. Within hours, federal agents moved in and Mohammad was arrested and charged with 7 counts of murder for hire. In September 2025, he pleaded guilty to all 7 counts. He faces up to 70 years in federal prison. His sentencing is scheduled for December 2025. The most terrifying part? How close he came. If that cooperating witness hadn't gone to the FBI, 7 people would have been murdered. A mother, 6 children. And the man who planned it all? A plumber. Someone who'd built a business on trust. Number 2. Binh Luke, the San Francisco Massacre. It was a Friday morning, March 23, 2012. A 12-year-old girl and her mother stopped at the family home on Houth Street in San Francisco's Ingleside neighborhood. The grandparents lived there, along with their Uncle Vincent, his wife, and her aunt. It was supposed to be a quick visit. Instead, she walked into a slaughterhouse. 5 bodies, covered in blood, soaked in cleaning chemicals, water flooding through the rooms from dismantled plumbing fixtures. Her grandparents, Hua Shun Lei and Wan Yi Uksu, 65 and 62 years old. Her uncle Vincent Lei, 32. His wife Chia Hue Chu, 30, and her aunt Ying Shui Jess Lei, 37. All of them bludgeoned to death with a hammer. The 12-year-old ran out screaming, "They killed my brother! Can someone please help me?" Police arrived to a scene of absolute carnage. Blood spatter covered multiple rooms. Household cleaning products, bleach, soap, cooking oil, paint had been poured over the bodies. The P-traps under sinks had been removed, causing water to flood through the home. Whoever did this knew about plumbing. Within 48 hours, they had a suspect, 35-year-old Binh Thai Luc, a Vietnamese immigrant, a plumber by trade, and a close friend of Vincent Lei. Luc went by the nickname Ping. He and Vincent had played mahjong together for years. He was a regular guest at the Lei family home. But Luc's life had been falling apart. By March 2012, he was drowning in debt. He had a serious gambling addiction. His bank record showed a balance of just $1.01 on the day of the murders. And he knew Vincent Lei kept large amounts of cash at home. On the night of March 22nd, around 11 p.m., Vincent received a call from his wife. "Ping is here. He wants to talk to you." Vincent left shortly before midnight. By 2 a.m., neighbors heard loud noises, yelling, commands to get down on the ground. Then, silence. By 7:30 the next morning, 5 people were dead. Police found Luc 2 days later at a motel in San Mateo. He was reading news articles about the crime. In his possession, $6,518 in cash, despite having only $1 in his bank account days earlier. Detectives recovered Luc's work van. Inside, bloodstains matched Vincent Lei's DNA. At the crime scene, they found Luc's blood in multiple locations. The blood spatter patterns indicated the attack had been carried out room by room, systematically hunting down every family member. The trial didn't begin until October 2017. After 7 weeks of testimony and 6 days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict on December 11, 2017. Guilty on all 5 counts of first-degree murder. 5 lives erased in a single night by a man who was supposed to be a friend. A man who knew how to fix pipes, but dismantled them to wash away evidence of mass murder. Number 3. Nathan Smith, the road rage killer who fled to Austria. The evening of January 3, 2020 started like any other Friday night in Finsbury Park, North London. 30-year-old Taki Dean Boudane, known as Taki, was delivering food for Deliveroo on his moped. He was a chef by trade, but he delivered to make extra money. He wanted to save enough to return to Algeria, where his mother was waiting. Around 7 p.m., Taki was riding through narrow streets when a white VW Caddy van made a close turn ahead of him. Taki pulled alongside. Words were exchanged, nothing unusual for London traffic. But the man driving that van, 28-year-old Nathan Smith, a plumber from Archway, wasn't going to let it go. Smith pulled into Charteris Road and stopped. Taki stopped too. And that's when Nathan Smith stepped out with a knife in his hand. CCTV footage captured the next 60 seconds in brutal clarity. Smith emerged, knife drawn. Taki swung his crash helmet defensively, trying to keep distance, but Smith kept attacking. Prosecutor Julian Evans QC described it. Smith went on the attack, He was the aggressor. He ran at Taki Dean multiple times with the knife. Even when Taki tried to retreat, Smith simply was not prepared to let things rest there. Smith ducked beneath the helmet and swung the knife twice. Two powerful blows aimed at Taki's upper body. One struck home. The blade entered Taki's chest, penetrating 7.5 centimeters deep. Despite the wound, Taki didn't collapse immediately. He ran after Smith as the plumbers scrambled back into his van. Taki struck the vehicle with his helmet, desperately trying to stop him. But Smith accelerated and drove away. Moments later, Taki collapsed on the pavement. At 7:42 p.m., less than an hour after the confrontation began, Taki Dean Boudane was pronounced dead. Meanwhile, Nathan Smith drove home. He said nothing to his family about what happened. The next morning, Smith packed a bag. He took his brother's passport, his brother's bank card, and he boarded a flight from Luton Airport to Austria. Scotland Yard issued an arrest warrant in February 2020. For 17 months, Taki's family lived in agonizing limbo, knowing who killed their son, unable to see justice. This man continued to torment my family by refusing to accept responsibility, Taki's mother would later say. We had to endure 17 months of questioning how he was taken from us. And then another blow. Taki's father died before the trial. He never got to see Nathan Smith brought to justice. Finally, in June 2021, Smith was located and arrested. He was extradited back to the UK. At the Old Bailey in August 2022, Smith's defense tried to argue self-defense. He claimed Taki had been holding a screwdriver, but the CCTV footage made that argument impossible. The jury watched as Smith, knife in hand, pursued Taki even when the victim was retreating. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: guilty of murder. On August 25, 2022, Judge Mark Lucraft QC sentenced Nathan Smith to life in prison with a minimum of 21 years. Taki's mother delivered a statement that brought the courtroom to tears. When the defendant acted in pure anger that night, he did not just kill my son, he killed my whole family. Detective Chief Inspector Neil John summed it up. It is an absolute tragedy that what seemed to start as a minor road traffic dispute led to him losing his life. Nathan Smith remains incarcerated. He won't be eligible for parole until 2043. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Number 4. Andrew Hartley, the botched installation that became manslaughter. December 16, 2010. Bath, England. Inside a luxury home on Scion Hill, 37-year-old gasfitter Andrew Hartley was finishing what should have been routine work. He'd been hired to install a new Worcester boiler. The job paid over £2,000, but Hartley was rushing. 13 days later, on December 29th, 24-year-old Zoe Anderson was found unconscious in the shower room. Her boyfriend discovered her collapsed on the floor. Paramedics rushed her to hospital. At first, doctors thought she'd slipped and hit her head, but toxicology reports revealed the truth. Zoe Anderson had died from carbon monoxide poisoning, and the source was the boiler Andrew Hartley had installed less than 2 weeks earlier. Investigators from the Health and Safety Executive found the flue pipe, the component that channels deadly exhaust gases outside, had never been properly secured. Hartley had failed to attach it with screws. Instead of venting outside, carbon monoxide had been pouring into the garage for 13 days. From there, it seeped into the rest of the house. Zoe wasn't the first victim. Days before her death, a cleaner had collapsed at the property with symptoms consistent with carbon monoxide exposure. At the time, no one connected it to the boiler. But Zoe Anderson wasn't so lucky. She was a neuroscience graduate, brilliant, kind, full of potential. She'd just spent Christmas in New York with her father and sisters. On the morning of December 29th, she went into the shower room. Within half an hour, she was overcome by fumes. She collapsed and she never woke up. Andrew Hartley was arrested and charged with manslaughter by gross negligence. At Bristol Crown Court in February 2012, prosecutors called it a rushed and botched job. Expert testimony showed that if the flue had been properly secured, if Hartley had taken just a few extra minutes, Zoe Anderson would still be alive. Hartley admitted he'd failed to secure the flue, but he couldn't explain why. "I don't know why I didn't do it," he said from the witness stand. "I just don't know." After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just over a day. On March 2, 2012, they returned guilty by a majority of 10-2. Andrew Hartley collapsed in the dock. He wept openly. Judge Neil Ford QC sentenced him on April 18, 2012. Zoe was a young and talented woman with a fruitful life ahead of her. You knew the potential dangers of a carbon monoxide leak, and leaving with flue unconnected created a clearly foreseeable risk to life. Andrew Hartley served his sentence and was released in 2015. He has never worked as a gas fitter again. Zoe Anderson's death became a landmark case in the UK, a reminder that even small mistakes can have irreversible consequences. Because Andrew Hartley didn't mean to kill Zoe Anderson, but she's still dead.
Number 5. Rotherie Durrell Foster, the plumber who killed for cash cards. July 27, 2022. Thousand Oaks, California. 35-year-old Jose Antonio Velasquez met friends for beers at Jan's Marketplace. It was a casual evening. Jose had moved to the United States from Honduras when he was 15. By 2022, he built a life. He worked hard as a plumber, earned his general contractor's license, and was starting his own business. He was saving money to help his parents buy a home. He called his mother often, talked about the future. But after that evening, Jose Antonio Velasquez was never seen alive again. 3 days later, his family reported him missing. Something was wrong. Jose always answered his phone, but now, silence. Then, in mid-August, investigators made a breakthrough. Someone was using Jose's debit card. Surveillance footage showed the same man swiping Jose's card again and again, buying gas, buying food, buying clothes. That man was 37-year-old Rotherie Durrell Foster, a plumber, a work acquaintance of Jose's, and a 2-strike felon with a violent past. Foster was arrested on August 17, 2022. But Jose was still missing. Then, on October 3, 2022, 2 hikers were exploring the Santa Monica Mountains when they noticed an unusual smell. They followed it, and what they found would haunt them forever. Jose Antonio Velasquez's remains, partially decomposed, hidden in rugged terrain. The autopsy confirmed multiple gunshot wounds, homicide. On January 18, 2023, Ventura County District Attorney Eric Nasarenko announced that Foster was being charged with first-degree murder. This is a murder for money case. The murder was carried out for financial gain. Foster had known Jose through their work. After killing him, he stole his wallet, debit card, checks, and for weeks he used them freely. But the investigation didn't stop there. As prosecutors built their case, they noticed something odd in Foster's bank records. Payments, multiple deposits, all from the same person. A 72-year-old man named Bill Dean Levy. Levy was a retired bookkeeper who lived alone in a Granada Hills condo. In January 2022, 6 months before Jose disappeared, Levy was found dead in his home. At the time, no foul play was suspected. The death was ruled natural causes. But now, investigators noticed something disturbing. The payments Foster received from Levy's accounts, they'd been made after Levy was found dead. On January 11, 2022, the day after Levy's body was discovered, someone had logged into his bank account and transferred money to Foster. Someone had written checks to Foster using his checkbook. That someone was Foster. Ventura County Sheriff Jim Fryhoff ordered Levy's body exhumed. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner performed a full autopsy. The results were shocking. Bill Dean Levy had died from fentanyl poisoning. His death was now ruled a homicide. How did Foster know Levy? Simple. He was his plumber. Foster had been dispatched multiple times to Levy's condo. Over time, he'd learned his habits, his vulnerabilities. And when Foster needed money, he saw an easy target. In May 2024, Foster faced 33 felony counts, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, murder in the commission of a burglary, 8 counts of identity theft, intentional administration of poison, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Prosecutors also linked him to a third victim and an armed robbery where he'd tied up employees. Cell phone data and license plate readers placed him at each crime scene. And here's the most chilling part. Rotherie Foster wasn't a first-time offender. As a teenager, he'd been convicted of voluntary manslaughter and assault. He'd served 16 years in state prison, released on parole in 2018. 4 years later, he was back to killing. Rotherie Durrell Foster remains in the Ventura County Todd Road Jail without possibility of bail. His trial is ongoing as of 2025. If convicted, he faces multiple life sentences without parole. For Jose Velasquez's family, the pain is unimaginable. I will never find a good reason for him to kill him. There is no reason, just greed. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, because this next part gets even darker. Number 6. Paul Weadick, the mob plumber who held a man's legs while he was strangled. May 10, 1993, Sharon, Massachusetts. 43-year-old Stephen DeSaro arrived at the home of Dorothy Salemi, estranged wife of New England Mafia boss Francis Cadillac Frank Salemi. Stephen owned The Channel, a popular rock and roll nightclub on South Boston's waterfront. But Stephen had a problem. The Salemis, Francis and his son Frank Jr., were silent investors in his club, using it to launder money. And now the FBI was closing in. Days earlier, an FBI agent had approached Stephen with an offer: cooperate against the Salemis. Stephen was considering it. And somehow, the Salemis found out. When Stephen walked into that Sharon home, he thought he was there to discuss business. But Francis Salemi, his son Frank Jr., and a third man, 61-year-old Burlington plumber Paul Weadick, had other plans. According to testimony given years later by Stephen the Rifleman Flemmy, a longtime Salemi associate, Flemmy walked into the house and stumbled upon a murder in progress. Frank Salemi Jr. was strangling Stephen with his bare hands, and Paul Weadick was holding Stephen's legs off the ground, making sure he couldn't support himself, couldn't fight back, couldn't escape. Minutes later, Stephen DeSaro was dead. For 26 years, Stephen's family had no answers. He was simply gone. Then, in March 2016, authorities received a tip. The owner of a former mill building in Providence told the FBI there was a body buried behind his property. Investigators excavated the site, and there, buried in a hazardous waste pit, were Stephen DeSaro's remains. Within weeks, Francis Cadillac Frank Salemi, who had been living in Atlanta under witness protection, was arrested. So was Paul Weadick, still working as a plumber in Burlington. Both men were charged with murder of a federal witness. At Weadick's hearing, prosecutors argued he was violent with deep ties to organized crime. The judge denied bail, writing that Weadick would likely flee and pose a risk to harm to the public. The trial began in 2018. The government's star witness was Flemmi, serving life for 10 murders of his own. He described in chilling detail what he'd seen that day. Frank Jr. was strangling DeSaro. Weadick was holding his legs off the ground so he couldn't fight back, couldn't escape. And Frank Sr. was standing there, watching. The defense tried to poke holes in Flemmi's credibility, but the prosecutors had more. Forensic evidence, testimony from mobster Robert DeLuca, who admitted helping dispose of the body, phone records, witness statements. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury reached their verdict. On June 22, 2018, Francis Cadillac Frank Salemi and Paul Weadick were both found guilty of murder of a federal witness. Outside the courthouse, Stephen DeSaro's family finally had closure. Stephen was a good man. He was trying to build a legitimate business, and they killed him because they were afraid he'd tell the truth. Paul Weadick remains incarcerated. Francis Salemi died in prison in December 2022. For decades, Weadick had lived an ordinary life. He fixed sinks, he installed water heaters. But on May 10, 1993, he held a man's legs while that man was strangled to death. And 26 years later, just
finally caught up. Number 7. Simon Parks, the alcoholic plumber who killed over cigarettes. May 24, 2022. Newport, Wales. It was 7 a.m. when 52-year-old Simon Parks walked into a corner shop and bought 8 cans of lager. An hour later, he returned for 4 more, and cigarettes. By 8 a.m., he was back at the house on Leach Road, the home he'd shared with his partner and her elderly mother, 79-year-old Mari O'Flynn. Parks, a former plumber whose drinking had spiraled out of control, had moved out 5 months earlier. But 5 days ago, he'd returned, and tensions were building. Mari O'Flynn was a quiet, gentle woman, a great-grandmother. She loved watching sports on TV, drinking tea, and telling funny stories about living in Greece. She suffered from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and diabetes, but she was still sharp, still kind. But Parks resented her. According to court testimony, Parks held a long-term grudge against his partner's mother. He blamed her for everything. And on the morning of May 24th, after drinking a dozen pans of lager before 9 a.m., Parks snapped. It started with cigarettes. Parks had run out. He asked Mari for some. She refused. Parks went into Mari's bedroom. She was lying in bed, vulnerable, frail, and he attacked. He punched her repeatedly in the face. Then he wrapped his hands around her throat and strangled her until she stopped breathing. Mari fought back. She clawed at his face with such force that she left deep gouges, drawing blood. But at 79 years old, suffering from lung disease, she had no chance. And during the attack, Parks sexually assaulted her. When it was over, Parks changed his clothes. He left Mari's body partially naked, covered with a blanket. Then he walked out, went to another shop, and bought more alcohol. For hours he drank. He walked around. He acted as if nothing happened. Finally, around lunchtime, he knocked on a neighbor's door. "I've had it now," he said, calmly. "I've killed her." The neighbor was stunned. "What? Who?" "My mother-in-law, over cigarettes. She wouldn't give me any, and she wound me up, so I strangled her." The neighbor immediately called police. When officers arrived, they found Mari's body. Bruises on her face and neck, signs of violent struggle. Parks had fresh scratches all over his face, evidence of Mari's desperate fight for survival. In custody, Parks gave a full confession. "All this kicked off over nothing at all, but I ended up strangling my would-be mother-in-law over nothing. I am not going to be able to live with myself after this." At trial, Parks pled guilty at the earliest opportunity. On November 17, 2022, Judge Tracy Lloyd Clark sentenced Parks to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years. "You assaulted her both physically and sexually and strangled her until she was dead. She fought for her life, biting and scratching your face so that it bled." Outside the courthouse, Mari's family issued a statement. "Our mom was taken away from us in terrible circumstances. It's now time for us to grieve in private and try to move on. We will always remember Mom for her sparkle, repeating her funny stories about the good times she had living in Greece or hogging the TV to watch all the sport whilst drinking endless cups of tea." In July 2023, Parks appealed his sentence. The Court of Appeals dismissed it. Simon Parks remains incarcerated. He won't be eligible for parole until 2047. Mari O'Flynn was 79 when she died, a loving mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. She was murdered in her own bed by a man she'd welcomed into her home, a former plumber whose rage destroyed everything. All because she wouldn't give him a cigarette. Number 8. Richard Davis, the plumber who walked free after a fatal gas leak. January 4, 2011, Kinsale, County Cork, Ireland. The Trident Hotel sat on the edge of one of Ireland's most picturesque towns. On the night of January 8, 2011, 35-year-old Miriam Reedy was there for her cousin Marie's hen party. She was with her older sister Patricia and about 30 friends, celebrating Marie's upcoming wedding. The night was full of music and dancing. Most of the group partied until 5 a.m., but Miriam and Patricia, feeling tired, left around 1 a.m. and walked back to their room. By morning, both women were violently ill. Patricia called a doctor, describing symptoms like the winter vomiting bug, nausea, dizziness, weakness. The doctor treated them and left, but their condition didn't improve. When their cousin Marie, a nurse, came to check on them later that afternoon, she found something horrifying. Miriam was lying under a blanket, completely unresponsive. No pulse, her skin pale, her lips blue. Patricia was curled in the fetal position, shaking uncontrollably. Marie immediately called for an ambulance. Patricia was rushed to Cork University Hospital. Miriam was pronounced dead on the scene. The initial assumption was that Miriam had slipped in the shower, but when Assistant State Pathologist Dr. Margot Bolster performed the autopsy, the truth became horrifyingly clear. Miriam Reedy had died from acute carbon monoxide poisoning, and she wasn't the only victim. Other guests had become ill. A cleaner working in the same area had collapsed days earlier. Carbon monoxide had been flooding through the Trident Hotel for days, invisible, odorless, deadly. Investigators from the Health and Safety Authority traced the source to a gas boiler that had been converted just 4 days ago, on January 4th, by heating and plumbing contractor Richard Davis. Davis, 44, had been hired to convert the boiler from natural gas to liquid propane gas. It was supposed to be routine. But when investigators tested the boiler with a carbon monoxide detector capable of measuring up to 9,999 parts per million, the device immediately maxed out. The boiler had to be shut down instantly. Forensic analysis revealed that Davis had inserted the conversion chip, but he'd never read the guidelines. He hadn't adjusted the boiler settings, and critically, he hadn't tested it afterwards for leaks. As a result, the boiler had been spewing lethal levels of carbon monoxide into the hotel since the moment it was switched on. Miriam and Patricia had slept in a room directly above where the gases were accumulating. For hours, they'd been breathing in poison. On June 5, 2013, Davis was charged with manslaughter and 2 counts under the Safety, Health, and Welfare at Work Act. The trial began in October 2014 at Cork Circuit Court. It lasted 3 weeks. Prosecutors argued Davis had been grossly negligent. Expert testimony showed that if he'd simply followed the manufacturer's instructions, Miriam Reedy would still be alive. The defense argued that several other factors were responsible: poor ventilation, unsealed ducting, design flaws that predated Davis's work, a perfect storm of issues, not the fault of one man. Miriam's sister Patricia took the stand, describing the night in heartbreaking detail. "I breaks my heart to know I did everything I possibly could, but it just wasn't enough." She described Miriam as kind, gentle, caring, full of poise, grace, patience, and humility. She was a beam of light in all our lives. In interviews with police after Miriam's death, Davis had said, "I am sick to my stomach that it happened. I have to live with it for the rest of my life. I am extremely sorry for the hurt I caused." But the jury concluded that while his work may have contributed, it did not rise to criminal negligence. Richard Davis walked free, and Miriam Reedy's family was left with no justice, no accountability, just grief. A bright, talented woman, just 35 years old, weeks away from moving into a new home with her boyfriend, was gone. All because a plumber didn't read the instructions.
Number 9. Harald Sassak, the gas man who terrorized Vienna. Vienna, Austria, 1971-1972. Across the city, a terrifying pattern was emerging. Elderly women, living alone, vulnerable, were being attacked in their own homes. The method was always the same. A well-dressed, polite young man would knock on the door and announce, "The gas man is here." He'd show what appeared to be a valid identity card. He'd speak with confidence and authority, and the victims, trusting that he was there to help, would let him inside. Moments later, they'd be beaten, robbed, and left for dead. The press called him the gas man, and for over a year, he terrorized Vienna. Harald Sassak was born in 1948, the son of a bricklayer. He'd worked as a plumber and done his military service at Lons Hospital as an auxiliary from 1966 to 1969. By all accounts, he was friendly, helpful, well-liked by family and friends. But after contracting jaundice, he failed to provide his employer with medical documentation and was fired. He tried working as a confectioner next, but quit that job too. And then, one day an elderly woman approached him and asked if he could repair her gas appliance. When she tipped him for the work, something clicked in Sassak's mind. He called it the gas man plan. Between 1971 and 1972, Sassak carried out at least 15 attacks. He posed as an employee of the local gas company,
gained entry to homes, and once the victims revealed where they kept their money, he struck them down with blunt objects, hammers, metal rods, whatever was at hand. He stole cash, jewelry, anything of value, and then he left them unconscious, or worse, on the floor. 6 of his victims died as a result of their injuries. 79-year-old Richard Langer, 86-year-old Josefa Vierlinger, 69-year-old Aloysia Meschnark, 66-year-old Rosa Swartz, 86-year-old Maria Aberle, 85-year-old Eleanor Hauer. Some died immediately from blunt force trauma. Others succumbed days or weeks later. Brain injuries, pneumonia, kidney failure, all directly linked to the violence they'd endured. Police were desperate to find the killer. Except for a single fingerprint that didn't match anyone in their files, they had almost nothing to go on. Then, a neighbor of one of the victims, a graphic designer, worked with a police sketch artist to create an incredibly accurate facial composite of the attacker. The image was published in newspapers across Vienna. And, within days, a waiter at the Reiser Hotel recognized the man. He said, "That's Harald Sassak." Police found Sassak at the hotel, calmly drinking a glass of wine. One of his surviving victims was brought in and identified him immediately. Sassak was arrested without resistance. On the way to the station, he confessed. His trial began on January 22, 1974. The reading of the indictment alone took over an hour. Sassak admitted to the robberies, but he denied participating in any murders, claiming he never intended to kill anyone, that the deaths were unintended consequences of his attacks. The coroner disagreed. Medical evidence showed that 6 victims had died as a direct result of the violence Sassak inflicted. Their injuries were severe, deliberate, and in several cases fatal within hours or weeks. On February 7, 1974, Harald Sassak was convicted of 1 count of murder, 5 counts of manslaughter, 9 counts of robbery, multiple counts of theft. He was sentenced to life in prison. Harald Sassak became Austria's longest-serving prisoner. For 39 years he remained behind bars. During that time he became something of a dark celebrity within the prison system. In the 2000s, he was incarcerated at Stein Prison alongside some of Austria's most notorious criminals, including Josef Fritzl, the man who imprisoned and raped his own daughter for 24 years. According to media reports, Sassak and Fritzl became close friends, 2 monsters serving life sentences, bonding over their shared infamy. In 2013, after more than 39 years in prison, Sassak was released on compassionate grounds. He was 65 years old, suffering from a prolonged illness, and no longer considered a threat. On August 21, 2013, just weeks after his release, Harald Sassak died in a Lower Austrian nursing home. For the families of his victims, his death brought no closure. The elderly women he'd attacked, trusting, kind, vulnerable, had let him into their homes because they believed he was there to help, and he'd repaid that trust with violence, theft, and death. Harald Sassak, the gas man of Vienna, remains one of Austria's most notorious serial killers, a plumber by trade, a predator by choice.
Number 10. Glenn Mitchelson, the plumbing boss who couldn't control his rage. Not every story of betrayal ends in murder, but some reveal a pattern of violence that shows just how dangerous these men were long before the worst happened. Glenn Mitchelson was a plumbing business owner in Australia. He'd built a company, hired employees, and earned the trust of customers who invited him into their homes. But behind the professional facade was a man with a dangerous temper. According to reports from the Herald Sun and Sky News, Mitchelson was charged with multiple offenses, including stalking, choking a woman, and drug-related crimes. The details paint a disturbing picture. A man who used his physical strength to intimidate and harm someone who trusted him. A man who stalked his victim, refused to let go, and escalated his behavior to the point of strangulation, one of the most dangerous forms of domestic violence. Studies show that when a domestic abuser chokes or strangles their partner, the victim is 750% more likely to be killed by that abuser in the future. It's not just an assault, it's a warning sign, a red flag that screams, this person is capable of murder. And Glenn Mitchelson had crossed that line. Fortunately, his victim survived, charges were filed, and Mitchelson faced the legal consequences of his actions. But here's the question that haunts these stories. How many times had he been invited into someone's home as a plumber? How many customers had let him fix their pipes, repair their water heaters, work in their most private spaces, never knowing the violence he was capable of? Because the truth is, we never really know who we're letting inside. 10 plumbers. 10 men who entered homes under the guise of helping, fixing, solving problems. And behind that professional mask, murder, fraud, stalking, strangulation, poison, betrayal. Some of them killed for money, others for rage. Some over something as meaningless as cigarettes or a pair of yoga pants. But they all had one thing in common: access. They were invited inside, trusted, given keys, allowed into basements, bedrooms, bathrooms, the most vulnerable spaces in our lives. And they exploited that trust in the worst possible ways. Mohammad tried to hire a hitman to murder his entire family, 7 people, because they'd sided with his wife in a divorce. Binh massacred an entire family of 5, beating them to death with a hammer, then dismantling the plumbing to flood the house and destroy evidence. Nathan Smith stabbed a Deliveroo driver in the chest over a traffic dispute, then fled to Austria to avoid justice. Andrew Hartley's botched boiler installation filled a home with carbon monoxide, killing a 24-year-old woman who had her whole life ahead of her. Rotherie Darrell Foster poisoned a 72-year-old man with fentanyl, shot a colleague to death, and robbed them both, all while working as a trusted plumber in their homes. Paul Weadick held a nightclub owner's legs while the man was strangled to death in a mafia hit, then helped bury the body for 23 years. Simon Parks strangled his 79-year-old mother-in-law to death in her own bed, over a pack of cigarettes. And Richard Davis walked free after a gas leak at a hotel killed Miriam Rady, leaving her family with no justice. Harald Sassak terrorized Vienna for years, posing as the gas man to rob and murder elderly women in their homes. And Glenn Mitchelson stalked, choked, and terrorized a woman, showing the kind of violence that so often escalates to murder. These weren't random acts of violence. They were betrayals of trust, calculated, deliberate, enabled by the very access we gave them. So what's the lesson here? It's not that all plumbers are dangerous. The vast majority are honest, hard-working professionals who would never dream of harming anyone. But it's a reminder that we can never truly know who we're letting into our homes. Background checks matter. References matter. Trusting your instincts matters. If something feels off, if a tradesperson makes you uncomfortable, if they ask too many personal questions, if they seem more interested in your routine than the job, listen to that voice. Because the people in these stories, their victims trusted them, and that trust cost them everything. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, because we've got more true crime stories coming your way. Stories that will make you think twice about who you trust, who you let inside, and how quickly an ordinary day can turn into a nightmare. Stay safe, stay aware, and never forget, the most dangerous people are often the ones we least suspect.